like freestyle because then I'm not really prepared. So
Okay, no, that's cool. No, you stay ready. You stay ready.
all day.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us on this amazing YouTube video. I've been a little bit on break actually. I've produced some videos, some really important topics, talking about a lot of important topics. And I just recently actually came from a trip to Africa during Ramadan. So while I was fasting, I had the opportunity to be in Morocco and be there and pray there and fast there and be among all the people there. And that was really beautiful experience. My first time in Africa. So I really felt super
Wow.
blessed, super stoked, really changed my life. And it's been my lifelong dream since I was in high school. And then I went to Egypt and I just basically kind of made a little circle. And then I flew back in. So it's been about two or
Wow.
three weeks since I've been back, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation because this is really going to be blessings on blessings, I feel. I have a special guest with us today, Nyce Jones. Now, I'm going to briefly just talk about how I met him. So if y'all don't already know, there's the app Clubhouse. And I remember during the pandemic, it was a really like pinnacle space for people to connect in very creative ways. And it's really interesting how the both of us connected through hip hop therapy. And we were basically in a weekly, bi-weekly discussion about, okay, well, how do we incorporate hip hop within our classrooms, but more importantly than that, how do we analyze, break down, and then deliver it in a way that really carries this therapeutic conversation among adolescents? So I was just like tuning into what he had to say and what everybody else had to say. And then as soon as I was just telling him, as soon as I followed him on IG, I'd like been very religious about watching his stories because there's so many gems that you drop, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And I immediately had to hit you up and be like, yo, we have to talk about the art of planning and the art of self evaluation. Since in the Gregorian calendar right now, we are 6 months into 2022. So, the
Oof.
reason we're having even this conversation, of course, is because of you. So, I definitely want you to shed some light on what what prompted you maybe to share that post about, like, because you asked everybody, you were like, yo, where's everybody at, what are y'all doing? So that was really
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure connecting. It's very fascinating at how we connected and thinking about how like an audio only app has connected um, me with you and just a lot of other people even in that space. It's opened my eyes to a lot because I wasn't thinking about these different things as far as like hip hop therapy and contextualizing the lyrics in that sort of way, and it's really taken me on a very fascinating journey even since then and those discussions. So I definitely thank you for following and mentioning those things about my stories, specifically that one that led to this conversation because an interesting practice I've been doing that I don't talk about public. This might be the first time I'm talking about it like in a public format. I've told people individually, but since the quarantine, I've been digging. So one of the ways in which I dig, I've been looking at like old journals from years ago, old emails that I just never deleted, and then Facebook memories. So I literally every day go on Facebook memories and organize old posts, and then if something resonates with now, I'll take that and then I'll share it on Instagram and reshare it on Facebook. So the check-in post really came from I did that 2 years ago on Facebook and on Instagram. So I was like, oh, let me just see where people are at. And plus, I did a podcast with my homegirl Cami to end 2021, and we talked about going from vision boards. One of the things that stood out was we talked about vision boards, but I said we really need to go from vision boards to action boards because what's the point of having a vision if you got no action? Sometimes people fall in love with imaging, but
Hmm.
not the actual thing it takes to make that image a reality. And so knowing all those different things, I share those things. But a lot of times, the things I share is me talking to myself. I kind of just share it for other people to think about like what hit me. So yeah, so that practice has led me on an interesting path. Um, and I'm just glad that it does resonate with some people because I told my one homeboy, he's also in my book club. I'd be like, yo, I feel like I just be posting this stuff and nobody really cares. Nobody really cares. And then every time I say that or I say it to somebody out loud, I'll have people message me on Snap or Instagram like, oh my God, I really needed that right now. You have no idea. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm not alone in this boat. Gotcha. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate you saying that too.
No, I appreciate you being here and I appreciate you making the time. And for those of you who aren't familiar, the podcast specifically, and I'll link it in my bio, is the Intermission Podcast. And Cammie's really cool. I watched that conversation with y'all. That was really, really cool.
Oh, okay.
And for those of you who don't know, it's curated for Black millennials, and they talk about a lot of subjects: faith, music, culture, and a lot of different things. And I did appreciate what you were saying about the visual board too, because oftentimes, even, this is what I do. I might not use images per se, but what I'll do is, or maybe a lot of people could resonate with this. We'll have like, the beginning of the year, 1,001 things on our list, and then it's
Hmm.
just like it's collecting dust. And so I think one of the reasons why I reached out to you, I mean, not just because I resonate with a lot of the work that you're doing, but also because if we take a look at that self-evaluation aspect to it, I think, and the art of planning, like looking at our visual boards, looking at whatever it is that we intended for ourselves at the beginning of the year, we look back and we're like, okay, so where are we at now? And it's
Mm.
really humbling experience because you think you're doing all of these things, or maybe you're not doing a lot of the things that you said you were going to do. And so now you're like looking yourself at the mirror. So I wanted to ask you, like, I know that there's a lot to you, and I'm still learning a lot about you. So one of the things I'm really curious is what, how did you become an entrepreneur, and how does that relate to planning? Like, how have you been planning? Um, how do you define freedom in entrepreneurship? And yeah.
Um, Entrepreneurship. I just feel like that always appealed to me the most at a very early age. I also think part of it is because of all the stories I heard about my grandfather, who I never met, that my mom used to explain to me, and he owned about 220 acres of land in northern, not northern, but um, southeastern Pennsylvania. It's north, considered where I live now, kind of near where Blue Mountain is. It's a big ski resort here, and he owned 200 acres of land, and this was in the late 1800s into the 1900s, and telling me that, and how he owned cattle and things like that. So those stories from very early on always resonated with me, and it
Mm,
was like when, and then as I got older and realizing just how multidimensional this country is and the dynamics with race, for him to be a black man in Pennsylvania to own all that land, it was very monumental. So it was like it just gave me this like jolt of purpose all throughout. And so I was always somebody that, even though, growing up, we didn't always have a lot. It was like, nah, I'm gonna make sure I get a lot, like regardless, So that, I think that was the appeal, because it was like, it's not that I don't mind working for people, because I really don't. I have several jobs. I've had plenty of jobs in life. I just feel like I always feel like I could do it better than the way they're doing it. And it's not even an ego thing. It's just like, I think the way my brain works, I just spot like the inefficiencies, and then I'm vocal about it and like, all right, we need to fix this, and then they'll disagree, So it's like, all right, well, if I feel this strongly about it, I just got to take matters into my own hands. But now that I'm like older, at the age I'm at now, I more or less feel like it's a means of really impacting our community. I feel like a lot of us get robbed from thinking that we can start and create things from scratch on our own when we're so powerful. It just takes a little bit of work, planning, execution, and then like being exposed to different things. And I feel like the internet, is specifically quarantine, has helped expose people to a lot of things. There's a lot of great content out there. Everything is educational. People are going to observe this and they're going to receive some education from it. So I think that has really helped me a lot. And I pour that into even the students that I work with, people I connect with in the community, and I think that's what attracts me to it is that freedom, autonomy, create your own economy, and those are the best ways to really impact your community.
That was really beautiful. And you know what I seem to be noticing in my life is when I come across circle people like yourself, I find that that depth provides space and opportunity for excellence. And I think that in a lot of areas of your life, per se, what I've come to notice even about your stories is like you're always setting that really high mark. And a lot of people have this misconception that entrepreneurship is like not working for anybody. And the thing is like I'm in the same boat too. I've worked with people, I've worked for people, but at the same time too, it's that self sovereignty and that ability to say as an artist, you know what, I'm gonna expand in this way. I'm gonna set my standards in this way, and I have to plan my life for myself because if I fail to do
Mm-hmm.
that, then who's gonna do that for me? And so that's another thing too that really resonated with me with a lot of your posts because it's not just like one thing that you have said that had like sparked that. It's that you're like it's almost like a free subscription to all this knowledge, all this wealth, all this wisdom for real, and I really appreciate that. So how has your like planning been going like 6 months in? How are you feeling about the status of your progress?
Um, I'm gonna keep it all the way 100. I'm actually not. I'm so thrown off, to be brutally honest. Like the, I typically have a certain type of system where every year I'll map out stuff. I start planning for the following year early November. So I don't like to wait. I'm not big on New Year's resolutions. I start to re-alter my mind right after Halloween. Like to me, games are over. Family time at the end of the year with Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever things you celebrate. It's time to refocus and retool. So I go into assessment mode in November's and just look back on where am I at with my mind, where am I at with my body, where am I at with my soul, and
Hmm.
then where am I on these objectives I set for myself with, occupation, income, and different short and long term goals. So I start to review that, and I'm like, all right, well, if I fell short on stuff, look at the gaps. Does this matter anymore? How do we adjust on that gap? And so then I'll start that planning to shift the mindset before I can make it in the physical world. So I do that to end the year. And I'll also typically take like a social media cleanse. So a lot of times I won't be on the internet too much or like a lot less frequently. And I'm random. So if I feel like just taking off, like I'll just disappear off the internet for like months at a time with no notice, just be gone. And then people ask if they'll text me like something wrong, and I'm like, nah, I just don't feel like being on the internet. Like y'all know how I am. Like I just disappeared. But I feel like everyone in the world has my phone number, so it's like I'm always still accessible. I don't ignore anyone, so
Yeah.
I'll just not be on a platform. So and then typically what I'll do is in June, typically like towards the end of May or like the first week of June, I have like reminders to kind of assess where I'm at. And I do that quarterly too. I have these alerts where check in quarterly, plan for the next quarter. But I like to just be completely transparent and honest. Like I didn't do much of that like this year. There's been so many things going on. So I value this conversation because when you was telling me what we were talking about, it was a light bulb for me. Like, yo, you're behind on your routine. And I could have sat here and like faked it and be like, "Oh yeah, I do all these great things," and I can't. Like, I'm against that. I'd rather be transparent that I'm not on my routine game. However, I've been making strides without even going through that normal process. Where there's some things that I've kind of subconsciously assessed and was like, "All right, I expected to be doing this right now as it relates to like research and publishing and things like that." And so I'm like, all right, let me just make a list of what do I need to do to get that back in motion. And I just started, doing the outreach. For those who maybe seeing this come to my Instagram and I published about a book that me and my friend are working on, you know, when this year started, we planned to have that book released back in April. And so we're behind on that, but we talk about it, and even with the hurdles that we have, we both communicate with each other like, yo, it's supposed to come when it's supposed to come. And I was
Hmm.
like, you're right. I'm like, you're right. Like some of these different things, and I think just things we both experience as adults that are males and have children, and just kind of contextualizing these different spaces we operate in. He's also a business owner. I feel like those things have kind of helped give each other space and grace, and with what I plan to build conceptually, this is such like a small piece of it. I'm like so excited because we had a conversation every Wednesday. We have a conversation with things that we're working on, and so just stuff I've been consuming. I'm like so excited because I feel like everything really did happen the way it's supposed to, and when the book comes out and the way it's being rolled out, I feel like it's gonna be very iconic, and I feel like at first people may not get it the way it's intended to be received, and I'm okay with that, and I'm actually like welcoming it versus in the past I might have been like, oh my gosh, this isn't completely perfect, and I'm just gonna shelf it, and now I don't even care because the world's full of imperfections. So who am I really? Only thing I'm holding back is I'm only dimming my own light by not doing that. So
That's such a trip. Thank you, by the way, for sharing that story because I'm also working with one of my good friends, Elizabeth, and we both co-wrote a book for entrepreneurial women that addresses the mind, soul, and spirit. And so we've created this three sections. It's such a phenomenal planner. And we've also,
wow,
it was supposed to come out for New Year's, Gregorian calendar New Year's. Um, and it just, I mean, it's June right now and we still haven't found the right publisher, and that's okay because like you said, it's when the time is right. It's finished, it's fully complete, we've edited many times, we've sat down and we've talked about it, and it's really interesting because it's for entrepreneurial women. We have also a section there for because it's Indigenous Day today in Canada. We've created a section of
mm,
Indigenous practices that women can use to elevate their spirit, but also physically cleanse. And so it just so happened, it's really interesting how life sort of like works with that alignment is that we sat down and we talked about, she'd been telling me, oh, come on, we got to pray about it. Like we'll go to a church, we'll go to a mosque, we'll go to a temple, we'll go anywhere. We'll sit even on the grass and we'll meditate and we'll pray. Like she keeps telling me like, let's pray for this book, let's pray for this book. And I'm like, yeah, no doubt. That's what we're about. And it just so happened a few weeks ago that we decided on several flowers that we're actually going to garden and dry. And these flowers are for yoni steaming. So for women who are not familiar,
wow,
so for women who are not familiar, the yoni steaming basically is just going to be herbs, fresh herbs that you basically use for cleansing your uterus. You just sit on top of all of this steam that comes up in it. It's an indigenous practice, one from all over the world, and it's we're really excited about this because it's like a physical product with another physical product, and so we're
mm,
looking to like expand that, right? Like physical products that um, actually support the well-being of the individual. And so
I
that's it's
love that.
I love what you're saying too, because it's like, you can't be so dead set like, oh, it has to be this time at that time. No, it's like when it arrives, it's gonna arrive and it's gonna be dope, and it's gonna be transformative, and we're setting our intentions and we're praying for it, and we're hoping that our intentions are as pure as possible, and we continue to purify our intentions and make sure that it is for what it is. And so yeah, this summer we're going to be growing those herbs, so we're looking forward to that. And in the meanwhile, we're still doing our research with publishers and making sure that it's cost effective to publish this book. So yes, that's so cool
That's
that
what matters most.
some books. Like, what are the?
Yeah,
I,
yeah, that's trippy. That is trippy, and it's that's what's crazy about me and my friend talking because um he alludes to it in the intro that like this was like 10 years in the making. So there's been this like back and forth thing. So about 12, 11 years ago, I was publishing a magazine here where I live, and it was accessible online. But a big part of what people loved was the events that we would put together with my team. In addition to the magazine content, was uplifting and inspiring, and it dealt with a lot of what I say is creative entrepreneurs. Very hip hop, very creator centric. We had health components, fashion components, and then even sometimes we had things a little bit outside of the realm. And I was just on what I felt like was like a creative hot streak. And so I had a clothing line that was carried in stores for a little bit. And then I started this publishing company with two other friends of mine, and we had this whole blueprint and process. And so we were working towards doing that again, and then another idea just like hit me. I mean, it punched me right in the face, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, wait!" And I started digging up old notes, and I'm like, "Wait, so this makes sense. This makes sense. This is how people are psychologically consuming content and creativity, da da da." And then I hit up my friends, and I was like, "Yo, like, we should bring this back, but I have this whole new like concept, but we want to do it differently." But for me, I have everything I want to build under a particular brand of mine, which I, I I don't post a lot about it, but I mean it exists. But right now I use that as my name for photography. But I want to put everything under this Nyce Visions umbrella because I feel like everything begins with vision before it becomes a reality. And so I have this really intentionally designed blueprint, and I felt like publishing was a good way to start. And it's just it's gonna be such a cool fun process. But I love that my boy started his intro that way with kind of recognizing how like exactly what we're talking about. Like it's been this long process and different iterations exist, but everything comes when it's supposed to, and so it's just a phenomenal thing. And I think just what we've experienced as humans these past couple years, I feel like gave space for a lot of things. And I love that you mentioned products, like different products, because it always reminds me of this one random, I forget where it came from. It was a Kanye West interview. I just forget where the interview was. And I know at the time, it was probably from like 8, 9 years ago, one of the many ones where people thought like he was losing it, but he kept talking about how design and products were so important to him. And that always resonated with me because I don't think people realize how much design plays in our everyday lives. And so the more and more I've been quarantined, sitting with myself, reading old stuff, redesigning things, relaying out my home with paintings everywhere. I want my house to feel like an art gallery. I'm like, yo, design is everywhere. Everything intentionally designed is the best. And so what you're saying is like, just having very deep intentional design with products, with what you're publishing, like those things are going to be able to really impact everybody that consumes it, no matter what capacity. And I love that because that's what I want to do. I want everything to be so detailed and intentional. But even though I'll miss some things and it's out, who cares? I'll fix it on the re-up. I'll fix it later. Like
First
there's
of
a
all,
reason
I
I can
gotta
do that.
say, your photography is absolutely beautiful. I didn't get to look at all the albums, but I saw a few of your work and I was really astounded. I'm not surprised you're an artist, but that seeing photography, I was like, that's what's up. That was really beautiful. And it doesn't surprise me that you want your house like an art gallery. But the thing for me is that what I really, really appreciate about you, and I'm really not trying to, I'm really not trying to, toot your horn, but I really gotta say that for you as especially as a male, because I don't come across a lot of men who write like that to me, or even looking back at your writing, like that to me is like, what? That's my foundation, that's my core foundation, and how I'm able to process a lot of things in my life. I've been writing since I was like 7, 8 years old, like short stories and poems and all that jazz. But to have
Wow.
men to see that, I'm like, okay, I gotta ask him about this. So that's my first question. I want you to touch upon that. And then my second and final question is about fatherhood. And so, how does planning, how does self-evaluation as a father? I think fatherhood is a immense, beautiful blessing, and just seeing how much love you express for your children and for your kids, and you keep it private, but at the same time, you I remember, I think it was your daughter's graduation photos, and you were like sharing that. I'm so proud of her, all that jazz. I was like, you know what? I love this so much. So those are my two final questions.
Yeah. So the first one was about the writing
Yeah.
part. Yeah. So, oh man, it
Come on,
when you
talk
just
to
were
us.
talking about it,
Talk to
I'm
these
like,
guys. Help.
I'm
Tell
like,
them.
wait, when did I start writing? And it's
So,
so trippy because in elementary school, we had this assignment. We had to put like short stories in, and we made our own like books. And it was funny because I had when my daughter was small, I had showed her this book, and she thought it was just like the funniest, coolest thing ever. But the one story in it, she's like, "Oh, I want to do a sequel to that." And we talked about it. She never did, but it was just a cool conversation. But I think I really enjoyed writing, and it's just hitting me now just how much I've always enjoyed creativity because it's like your own mental playground. And that's why I was drawn to marketing in college because it gave me this space to just create things that don't exist or improve on things that exist in a new way. And so that's why I was writing then. And I think once I got to high school is when I started my practice of just having like an extra book with me. So I started to journal, but then while I was journaling, it then turned into let me just write this poem, and then the poems turned in let me write these rhymes, and then these rhymes turned into wow, this would be a cool movie concept. This would be a cool song concept. This would be a cool um, this should exist. This could be a great TV show. So I've always practiced that. And then when I got to college, I was always bored with school, and I tell my students this because I try to be just as transparent as possible, and I try to help them learn from my mistakes because I feel like I could have done better in college, but I always had a notebook with me because I would be lost, not lost, but I just couldn't focus on whatever the teacher was talking about. So I had the extra notebook to jot down ideas or the journal, whatever I was thinking or feeling at the time. It was just very authentic and very raw in that way. And I saved all those notebooks, but I look back at them again now. I'm able to just, I call it now just, especially because I've heard this concept. It's probably existed for the longest, but because I'm in these mental health spaces, I hear more about it. But the inner child work, and so it's like, yo, the fact that I can read something that 20-year-old me wrote, like what was that dude thinking, and I actually have an accurate depiction of that, and then I can take some of the good and the bad, use that for me now, so future me could be happy with present me's doing. You know what I mean? So I always tell people like do things now that your future self will look back and thank you for. And so it's helped me. So I have this whole like random middle child concept. I might publish it one day, or who knows. I've talked about it with people just in passing. I don't know that I've said it anywhere, but you're always in the middle. Your present tense is in the middle. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunity like with that. So that's why now like I'm just like, all right, let me just make journaling a habit,
hmm,
the same way I did it before. And no matter what it is, just constantly in a state of creating. So now I always joke, I'm like, man, if my phone ever gets hacked, or when my time here is done, whoever gets access to my phone, there's like, let me see. I'm curious what my count is at now. I'm pretty sure I have easily 2,200 notes in here.
wow. I love the notes. I've been using them less for in the last, I would say, 2 or 3 years. But before, I remember, especially when I was like taking the subway, I was on the subway, and if I thought of a book title that I wanted to write, I'm like, yo, if it ever comes, if I ever get that opportunity to write a book, or if I like think of something like I haven't heard about anyone writing a book like this. And so I came with like over 20 titles, and then it turned into 40,
Wow.
50. And I was like, wait, this is a trip. Like, what happens when you can just go back and like start adding? And it was like my little creative game, like I'll just go back and be like,
Yes.
oh, okay. Like, what else is, what else is up with this? But fact.
Yep, it is. It's definitely a playground, and that's why I don't believe in bad ideas anymore. They're just you got to continue to brush a little dirt off of it because diamonds are in the dirt. You know what I mean? So everything, every draft, every idea, every concept, even playing around now, like the amount of stuff I come up with on the fly at my university job, my students are always like, "Did you just come up with that like right now?" Like, cause I'll craft a story in real time, and I'm like, "Oh no, yeah, I just made that up." Like, "Oh my gosh, that's pretty funny," or "That's interesting." Like, how did you do that? So now I was just more mindful of writing them down. So I have them organized. I have like mad folders and then the notes in them. But yeah, I'm at 2175.
Well, gentlemen, I mean, if you think it's way too much to be carrying a book, that it
Yeah.
deflates your masculinity in any way by holding a journal or a notebook and a pen wherever you go, you still got your notes. You still are able
Yep. Right in the phone.
right in the phone if that's what it is, if that's not your cup of tea. But the
Yep.
point is could be purposeful. And I feel like I could talk to you about so much. And I want to, and I definitely need you back on my channel because you definitely have a lot of gems that you're dropping. And I do have students, I have family, I have peers who are, various ages from 20 to 40 and 50 watching my channel. And I try to bring in, this is not the only channel that I run. So I always try to bring in guest speakers that I feel like other people who actually give me feedback about my work are watching. So I think that this is going to be really cool. I have a 21, 22-year-old brother that I practically raised. So I know he's going to be
Mm.
watching this, and this is going to be a really cool conversation for him. I have my cousin Omar, who I know who's going to really learn a lot just from having a male voice, and I think the beauty of that balance of that yin and yang is like some things that I really, even for my students, like one of my students who he full time raps and he makes
Oh
music,
wow.
and I'm helping him right now, study for his exams. And we're early in the morning, and like, right now we're actually studying about Vietnam War, and so I played him some clips of Muhammad Ali, and so for him to
Ooh,
understand
love
that,
that.
I'm like, let me show these clips, like let's throw back on this real quick. And that's the way that he understands it, because these are some figures in his life that his family uh talks about, reminisces about, Black Panther Party. I have these books. I'm like, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
taking excerpts from that and being like, yeah, we're studying for this test, but also let me hit you with real life real quick. So having, and I know that he has access to my channel, so I share my content, and to even have you as a speaker, as a role model, um, in that aspect is, I feel like infinitely grateful for your presence and for your work and for what you do. I know how sometimes, like how artists be like in their own little cave doing your own thing,
That's me.
focusing on you. But at the same time too, I just feel like this conversation has brought up a lot of important points, not just about planning and self-evaluation, but even in just about the creative space and where you're at. So we do have like about 4 minutes before it shuts us down.
Okay.
I've been having a little issues with Zoom on this, but if you have
Oh,
like
I feel you.
a minute and a half or two to just touch upon maybe fatherhood and like what that's like for you as an entrepreneur, what that's like for you as a creative, what that's like for you for planning. How do you make it work?
Yeah. I think I do a decent job most of the time. And so I think the biggest thing is just trying to maintain balance, and then also just trying to consciously break generational curses, because I don't think anyone has perfect parents or perfect situations. Anybody who thinks you're gonna float through life with zero trauma, you must have lost it. Like, so there's no way around it. So it's like I think part of the deep reflection for me is thinking of what were the things that like really triggered me or that was done wrong to me that I don't want to do on my kids. And I know I'm not perfect, but I try to balance things out. And so I have my kids every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's just how our schedule works. And then they're with their mom the other days. So, pretty much I don't plan a lot with them. Now that they're older, there are some things that I will do. But my daughter plays softball. She's in high school, so I try to be there as much as possible. And now I'm getting my son into more activities, and he's a teenager. And he's on the spectrum. He was diagnosed with diabetes in 2020. So planning is constant with him because I got to plan his meals when he's going to sleep, check his blood sugar, give him insulin. And so it's just trying to be as intentional as possible, trying to be as present as possible. Um, and I'm always saying how like I don't like yelling. I don't like
Hmm.
raising my voice really unless I have to. I just try to be very cognizant of that and just constant state of zen. But I think listening and being aware is like one of the most important things, and then everything kind of like falls after that, and just what can I do, what can I do, and just trying to be like very present because I didn't have any of that. I didn't grow up with a dad, so like there's literally zero manual for me. All I think I got is off of people I know that had dads, what that was like, good or bad, and then different father figures maybe I've read about or shared space with. And so it's like, all right, let me just try to take all these things and mold things to like my own way. But they've taught me a lot. My daughter was born when I was in grad school working on my MBA, and so she was born like right when I started, and I was also in real estate classes, full time grad student, and I was done in less than a year, and got the real estate license, and I was just super motivated. Like, all right, like I got stuff to do. I got a little girl.
Love
I'm
that so
23. I
much.
gotta make moves.
Love this. Nice. I'm so happy that we were able to touch base seriously because this is by far the best conversation I've had all month. And I just really
Thank
want
you.
to give props to you too because I sense your intuition and you're a man of balance and equilibrium. And again, I want to emphasize how much of a role model you are to the men that you meet and the men that you don't. And thank you so much. I look forward to having you again. Have a beautiful evening. Thank you so, so, so. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. You too. Appreciate your time. Peace and blessings, everyone.
Peace and blessings. So I am going to save this and I'm going to do a little editing if necessary, and then I'll send you the link right away.
All right.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry I didn't let you know how much time it was, but
Oh, it's cool. Yeah, it's all good.
all
I
right.
never know it was Zoom, so
Yeah, I appreciate you. Have a good one. We'll touch base again.
all right.
All
Have a good one.
right. Bye.